evening and welcome everyone to for our Green Tree Council meeting for Monday, September 12th, 2022. We will have a moment of silence. We had a historic event we celebrated yesterday, 21 years since 9/11. So certainly we can remember all the people who perished in that crazy, insane time we had there, and any other personal intention you may have. So we'll have a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please, Kim.
Ms. Barrett?
Here.
Mr. Lindsay? Mr. Panza?
Reno, can you hear?
Yes.
We have a lot of feedback.
They asked if you were here or not.
I think he has to turn his computer off.
To mute computer on, I think just use your phone.
Please turn off the computer. Don't watch it.
Okay, that might have been the problem. Okay, so acknowledge that you're here.
I am here.
Mr. Panza?
Here.
That's not gonna work.
Mr. Ray?
Here.
Mr. Romanovich? Mr. Teresi?
Present.
Mr. Tintori?
Present.
Mayor Shea?
Present.
Okay, we do have an interesting circumstance tonight. One of our council members has COVID. So we researched the laws, the rules to determine if he was allowed to participate in. Supposedly he is allowed to participate through speakerphone, and he can make his comments and he can vote. But I can tell you, if it's going to be all this feedback like this, we may have to do something. If that's really, really bad, I don't know how we're going to handle it. Hopefully we can resolve it, but can't have all that.
Do we need the microphone against that speaker? That might be causing some.
Against it?
I think it was because I was on the,
I think that was it. You were on the video and that was a conflict.
Okay.
Getting feedback.
Good.
Okay,
Because it's not feedback.
just so you know, since there's nobody there, we were gonna have like a pirate hat sitting there, so people would at least remember who's there, but okay. Enough of that. So we need to have approval of the minutes for the August 1st, 2020 council meeting. Have a motion?
I motion to approve the minutes.
Yes.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
uh,
Motion passes. Okay, next up is a hearing of citizens. All persons wishing to address general business or agenda items will be heard at this time. So if you're interested, please step up to the microphone, introduce yourself, give your name and address.
Hello,
Good evening.
Don Folkmar, 1006 Avicle. The reason I'm here is about 5 years ago, we had lane restrictions put in AM and PM. And one of the reasons we had those restrictions put in, turn restrictions, is for the school children. The AM is fantastic, the PM not so fantastic. And my main concern is the kids getting off the bus, on the bus, walking the road. And the restrictions seemed to be doing great there for a while, but then during the summer, they kind of fell off. And I think we need just pick up a little bit where we were at before. And I also, last month, I stopped a person who I saw going up the street, same time every day, and said something to them. And she said, she lived on Pocono and the police just give her a warning. I said, it doesn't matter where you live. It's, there's no term there. So You shouldn't get special dispensation because you live on the street. That's it.
So
Thank
for
you.
the record, what streets are you talking about, just so that,
They turn off a Crane or Carnahan onto, or they turn off of Evercole onto Carnahan. So, but like I said, the mornings are fantastic. Every once in a while, you'll see somebody go up or down the street, but it's the PM that's the problem. Thank you.
thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much. Next up, we are having an MS4 presentation that'll be handled by Jason Stanton, who is with Leonard Smith Engineering. He's our consultant, and we are required to have this presentation. So Jason, it is yours.
Thank you,
The
Mr.
floor is
President, and certainly appreciate being in front of council this evening. The last time I addressed council as a whole was in 2017, when the council at that time passed Green Tree Borough's pollution reduction plan, and that's going to be an element that we get into as part of the MS4 presentation. And I handed out all the PowerPoint slides. I'm not going to go through them in all the detail. The first page is the outline, kind of the table of contents. I'm going to hit the key elements that you as a council, putting myself, if I'd be in a council position, those key elements that you need to know is councilmen and women with respect to our MS4 permit. That permit allows Green Tree Borough to discharge stormwater into the waterways of the Commonwealth. It's a federal permit that's mandated and enforced by the State Department of Environmental Protection with the primary goal of protecting water quality and limiting pollution. In terms of the permit timeline, 1972, the Clean Water Act was introduced. 1990, very large populations, greater than 250,000 people, were issued stormwater permits. Our permit here in Green Tree didn't come into play until 2003. It was administratively, typically they're good. They're for 5 years. They're five-year permit cycles. The first permit, admittedly, the state wasn't quite sure how to enact a policy, so it was administratively extended for 5 years. And so if you turn to the next page, 2013 was the second permit cycle. 2018 was the third permit cycle, and that's where the pollution control plan or the pollution reduction plan comes into play. And that was a requirement to be passed by all municipalities to enact, or, by the end of September 2017 for the March 2018 permit. The end of this month is the 5th year in the current permit cycle. Those permits will automatically renew. Our new permit will become effective March 1st, 2023. And by that time, according to the current permit, all the municipalities will have been required to implement their pollution reduction plan by that time. Now, certainly DEP understands, and they're part of the process. They're behind in terms of permitting pollution reduction program elements. A lot of the municipalities are behind in terms of implementing them, obviously with a global pandemic and a lot of recent activities. But our pollution reduction program here in Green Tree will be a significant capital improvement in 2023 that we'll need to plan for, budget for, and that's where I intend to spend most of my time this evening. And usually I finish these up in about 10 minutes in terms of the MS4 presentation. Under the 6th slide, the annual MS4 tasks, there's 6 minimum control measures. Tonight's presentation is an element in minimum control measure 1, public education and outreach. Minimum control 2, public involvement, participation, and MCM 6, pollution prevention, good housekeeping. And the annual report that's due at the end of September will document that this public officials training was conducted this evening, and that'll be one check mark in terms of compliance with the current permit. The next several slides that are titled minimum control measures, those are the key elements in there, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time in those. You can read those at your leisure. Moving to the annual report, it's due at the September 30th of this year. Self-reporting on progress made for each MCM along with PRP and PCM progress is required. There's a $500 renewal fee. DEP or EPA inspects Green Tree Borough once every 5 years, once every permit cycle. That inspection was conducted last year. My understanding, there were no violations, which was good. And at that time, we certainly acknowledged that we're behind on a PRP implementation. And I think DEP's response was, so is everyone else. So with that being stated, permit renewal expires in March of, the current permit expires next March. And DEP hasn't given any guidance in terms of pollution reduction plan requirements for the 23 through 28 permit cycle. So those are still pending.
I have a question. Are you going to review what we're behind on?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Following the next page, pollution reduction plans, they were developed in 2017, submitted to DEP to meet the following requirements: a reduction in 10% reduction in the sediment loading and 5% reduction in terms of total phosphorus loading, which is a nutrient in the environment. Each annual report include documentation supporting calculations of sediment and phosphorus removed. And, we'll report out on DEP in that regard. In terms of the borough PRP status, in that 2017 plan, that committed Green Tree Borough to restoring 1,700 feet of stream in Green Tree Borough. There were 1,700 feet selected of Whiskey Run, that's tributary to Lower Chartiers Creek along Glencoe Road. The next slide will show you that location map. In the Sawmill Run watershed, there were 2 pollution reduction plan elements: construction of a rain garden, or actually 2 rain gardens in Green Tree Park. So those elements, implementing those elements will complete the pollution reduction plan for Green Tree Borough. The following slide with the red cloud identifies the 1,700 linear feet of stream, Whiskey Run along Glencoe Road that is scheduled to be restored. The next slide kind of identifies if you would take a slice of Whiskey Run today, you see a narrow, shallow stream. The next slide that looks like a large V kind of shows the scope of work with the stream restoration. Laying the slopes back, restoring the pre-original floodplain, and developing plantings, anchoring those into the stream banks, having them grow and flourish. That's a typical standard detail that's been approved by DEP. The intent is to reconnect the floodplain, establish a riparian buffer. There's going to be rights of ways and easements required from the adjacent property owners for this project. And then long-term maintenance with supplemental additional flood control benefits over time. These stream restoration projects with the vegetation slow down the runoff that's coming off our suburban environment into Whiskey Run, and that'll slow the velocity down. Next slide are photos of Whiskey Run as it exists today. You see the shallow stream bed, fairly narrow. Again, those will be laid back, reestablishing the floodplain, and plantings will be installed. The next slide that shows Green Tree Park identifies the two blue stars where proposed rain gardens are indicated in that 2017 plan. One being beside the baseball field behind Aiken Elementary. And then the other one off the extension off Public Works' yard. So those two rain gardens have been nearly designed, as well as the stream improvements, and permits are anticipated to be submitted by the end of the month. So the design work, the preliminary design work is completed, and they'll be in DEP's hands for permitting, which can often take 6 to 8 to 12 months, depending on DEP's backlog. So it's prudent for us now that we're in budgeting season to take a look at the cost elements associated with those, and anticipate to bid these projects, or some portion of these projects, perhaps the rain gardens initially, because it's on property that Green Tree Borough currently owns. Perhaps bid those first, show signs of progress, and then follow up with the stream restoration, following the right-of-way acquisition.
I have a question. Not all of us were here in 2017.
Correct.
Can you please describe what a rain garden is?
Yes, rain garden is where inlets from our streets and roads would discharge into a depression in the earth with native plants, water happy plants, if you will, that would filter that water prior to it being discharged to its downstream pipe. It's essentially, it's not necessarily a stormwater detention basin that's large and includes a lot of volume. It's rather smaller in nature with native plantings, things like that, to filter the storm water before it's discharged. But that's a very good question. Thank you, Ms. Barrett. Here's where I want to spend the time on this evening, the anticipated costs. These are the same costs, the same order of magnitude that's in the 2017 plan. We've looked at them in accordance with our current scope, and ballpark, we're in the neighborhood of 1.1 to 1.3 million for stream restoration in both rain gardens. And that's something that we'll have to plan for in terms of capital budget, whether it be from our general fund or a topic that I'm going to cover tonight, or if it's capital borrowing, perhaps. Those things remain to be determined, but it's a federal mandate enforced by the state. It's not something that we can elect not to do. And what I will say is there's 2 pending grant applications before the state. The CFA Watershed Restoration Program and the DEP Growing Greener. I think we've submitted competitive applications that will take a healthy chunk of that budget should they be awarded. So obviously we need to advocate with our state representatives, state senators, advocate for funding for those projects, and those grant streams will also open up soon, and we would anticipate additional grant funding applications to be submitted. In addition to that, Green Tree Borough, as well as every other municipality in the South Hills and the city of Pittsburgh, has a lot of corrugated metal pipes that have been commonly used for storm sewer pipes. If you've ever heard the tin whistle discussion, it's very it's corrugated metal pipe that has a limited design life, that rusts and erodes over time. And we do have a lot of that in Green Tree Borough. Again, all the municipalities have. The Green Lawn storm sewer that was replaced this summer was structurally deficient and actually certain sections, it was absolutely gone, corrugated metal pipe that has eroded, since it was installed in the 40s and 50s. So we have those needs in terms of capital improvements here in Green Tree. A lot of storm sewer improvements have been completed, inlets, different things like that under the street and sewer maintenance contract that we've recommended for payment, but there's a lot larger initiatives that we in Green Tree are going to be facing over the next 2 to 3 to 4 years associated with that piping. And so, on Green Lawn, that project, once it's completed, is going to near $200,000. Catch basin inlets, very long list, has been called down to a short list. But the short list are the larger dollar items that we're going to need to factor into budgeting. So that being said, a lot of municipalities in the greater Pittsburgh area have considered stormwater fees. Our storm sewer system, currently, we derive no funding from that system. A lot of municipalities have started implementing a stormwater fee, and there's a table to describe some of those. I'm not going to go over all the detail in terms of why considering a fee. One of the things that I will note that enacting of a stormwater fee of a designated revenue source to meet the expenses that I talked about this evening takes a lot of burden off your general fund. That we're paying police protection, we're paying public works, we're paying snow removal, we're paying general government expenses, park expenses. If you can set aside the storm sewer utility much in a similar fashion as our sanitary sewer system, meaning our spent water usage from our houses, create a dedicated funding source that you can earmark to replace that infrastructure. And again, I'm not going to go over the details associated of why a fee and not a tax. That's certainly in the PowerPoint presentation. What I will tell you is establishing a fee. There's an equitable way to charge a fee to our single-family residential customers that relates directly to a large multi-level commercial property. And that unit is an equivalent residential unit, meaning doing a GIS analysis of 25 to 50 single-family homes in Green Tree, identifying the average impervious area, meaning driveways, roofs, from those residences, and then equating that to perhaps that large commercial structure might have 40 ERUs. And the billing basis would be on a per ERU basis. And we'll get to that in a minute. But there are ways to equitably do that. And obviously, some of our properties in Green Tree are tax exempt. Churches, things like that. Our own facilities being tax exempt. Under a fee-based structure, those facilities aren't exempt. Those facilities generate stormwater from the impervious area that use our storm sewer system, that derive a benefit and therefore aren't tax exempt. Okay. The last table that's in the packet is just a sample of what other municipalities in the South Hills and the greater Pittsburgh area that have established stormwater fees and what they're charging on a monthly basis. And usually these bills go out on a quarterly basis. There's one line item for sanitary sewer usage based on a cost per thousand of water consumption. The second line item would be an ERU basis, where a single family customer would get billed 1 ERU per month or 3 ERUs per quarter. Baldwin Borough here in the South Hills, being that they are a borough subject to the borough code. The borough code doesn't have the enabling legislation to allow a borough to assess a fee. They created a non-stormwater or a non-operating stormwater authority to collect that revenue, $8 per month per year ERU. Given us here in Green Tree that we're a home rule municipality, we're more akin to perhaps Mount Lebanon, who's also home rule, Whitehall Borough, Mount Lebanon, Whitehall, Baldwin, they charge about $8 per month per ERU. And there's other municipalities that charge more, some charge less, but that seems to be about the sweet spot. And given our composition of commercial properties and residential properties, I think ours could be less than the $8 per month and generate enough revenue to replace our corrugated metal pipe, to implement our PRPs, to build curbs under the street and sewer maintenance program. Curbs are a stormwater structure. So it's a new funding source that potentially Green Tree Borough could enact, being that we're a home rule municipality, not needing the enabling legislation. And it's something food for thought that I did want to present to council this evening. If there are any questions this evening, or perhaps in the future as we go through budget season, I did want council to know that. With that said, that concludes the presentation this evening, hitting the highlights. If there's any questions, I'll do my best to answer those.
Question. In regard to the grants, you mentioned 2 different potential grants, DEP Growing Greener and the CFA Watershed Restoration. Did your firm submit those grants?
Yes,
Okay. And how long ago were they submitted?
they were submitted in February and April
Of this year?
of this year. And all indications are at some point, it's very vague, but those grant awards have not been released yet. And every time we check, they anticipate being released in the fall.
And do they coordinate with each other? If you get a grant from one, does that limit your ability on the other?
No, they're 2 separate grants, independent of each other. Each one had a minimum borough match, and I believe it was around 15%. So we're eligible for 85% grant on both of those.
Okay, that was my other question, because you said a healthy chunk. So a healthy chunk is 85%. Approximately.
That's the maximum eligible
Okay.
grant that we're eligible for. That
Yes.
doesn't necessarily mean
Right,
the
you're
state
gonna
will
get it.
award us that.
The maximum healthy chunk is 85%.
Yes,
The minimum healthy chunk is 1%, I would imagine. Okay, got it.
yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions.
Correct.
So in 2017, you said we were behind on some of those projects. Are we behind on these 2 projects in particular?
Yes,
So
those
in
are the ones,
2017, those are the ones we decided that we should focus on.
correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And we haven't put a dent into those at all, or we,
The design, the preliminary design is completed. That work just started in April.
okay,
We're ready to submit the permits and reflected the same in our annual report. So the state knows that we are making progress very quickly.
are those projects that council voted on, or?
Yes,
We did, we voted on those in 2017.
yes, the PRP was advertised.
Okay.
30-day review and comment period and was approved, I think, in September of 2017.
Where are we, the stream restoration? You indicated on the Green Tree Rain Gardens preliminary design and the permits are going to be submitted. So we're moving along on the rain gardens. How about the stream restoration, 1,700 feet?
Yeah.
Have we taken any steps yet?
It's the same status. That preliminary design is completed. We're treating both the rain gardens and stream restoration as equal projects.
Okay.
And both the preliminary design has been completed and permits are going to be submitted by the end of the month. So they're both at the same status, Mayor Shank.
Both at the same, okay, I missed that, okay,
No, that's a good clarification on your part.
okay.
In the grant application that you submitted, does that cover the design all the way through, or just what is left for us to work on?
The majority of the costs are construction, and those grants were committed to construction. Yes.
So what action does council have to take now moving forward?
In terms of this evening, mandatory action this evening, none. This is for informational only, to document that we've had the public officials, elected officials training. If you want to consider moving forward with some sort of stormwater fee, basically what that is an engineering analysis that we come back with recommendations. Every commercial property in Green Tree Borough, we take off the impervious area, divide that by the average impervious area of our single-family residential units, develop a database of those ERUs, and then develop a budget, the stormwater fee budget that would include the PRP elements, stream restoration and rain gardens. It would include the CMP projects, the corrugated metal pipe replacement projects. It would include an allowance for curbs in our road program and develop a budget for that. And that would be part of your fee schedule that you would ordinarily approve during your course of action as Borough Council. So the short answer to your question, Mr. Ray, there's nothing that has to be acted on this evening. But I think next month, if you want to evaluate a stormwater fee, would be to authorize us to do that evaluation and come back to you with recommendations.
In the stormwater fee, you mentioned quarterly, being billed quarterly.
Yes.
It will go out on the current bills for storage. I mean, we won't need a separate bill, or would it go, if we implemented it, would we need a whole new collection system, or would it go out on current bills?
I think, and again, I'm not quite sure exactly how we bill sanitary sewage, but I think we could use a separate line item on there to bill quarterly. I think that's how we do it. If, I guess the key question is council interested in moving forward with something along those nature? The secondary question would be to how to acclimate it with the least amount of effort possible in our current billing structure pertaining to sanitary.
Right, I mean, I jumped to the second question, but it's important as to the
Absolutely.
first question also.
Yes.
They're intermingled. Okay, thank you.
Yes, and that would, there would be a series of ordinances and things like that that would need to be established for that fund. And through those ordinances would document how you would bill our residents and our commercial structures. So, but that's typically how it's done.
Thank you.
Any other questions for
Yeah,
Jason?
I unfortunately have several. If we go back to the Lower Chartiers Creek watershed project, you're proposing that we need 75,486 pounds reduction. So the proposed project would, how lucky, reduce it 76,296 pounds per year. So since we needed a 10% reduction, you guys, it was figured that the sediment going into the watershed right now is 750,000 pounds per year. What type of device or meter did you use to measure how much sediment is going into that?
That's a very good question, Mr. Panza, and there wasn't a meter. It's an empirical
It's an
equation
arbitrary guessing number.
based on the guidance that DEP gave, yes.
Okay, now, my understanding is sediment going into the creek would probably be caused by rainwater flowing sediment into the creek. So a year like this year, when there's a 30% reduction in rainwater in Green Tree, wouldn't it then be a 30% reduction in sediment? Wouldn't that associate the amount of rainwater that we're dispersing would associate with the amount of sediment?
Not necessarily.
Okay,
From the perspective of, if you would take 2018 or 2019, that we've had historically wet years.
exactly.
That value may
It would
go
have
up.
been, it would have been more. But
But this,
I mean,
sediment
did
requirement-
you arbitrarily take not you, but did they take a 20-year period and average it out? Did they take a 50-year period? It's just like these numbers, like how they can determine that if we do this, we'll save that extra 1,000 pounds of sediment by doing this reduction, which brings me to my second question. So you're proposing that we come in and devegetate and clear out the sides of the streams and then add vegetation.
correct.
So we're taking the vegetation that's out, but then we're adding more in. It just seems like a redundant thing. Why not just leave the vegetation there? Now, if we're taking sediment out from the sides, that sediment is going someplace, whether we pile it up in a parking lot in Green Tree or wherever we pile up the sediment that we take out, that eventually is the rainwater is going to flow back into some other stream. If we take it out of Green Tree, send it to Scott Township, yes, the sediment goes there, but it just seems like a waste of money when that sediment's going to get back in the stream regardless of what we do.
In terms of the sediment, let me at least address the first question.
Okay,
Currently, there's minimal vegetation in the stream bed itself. As you can see from the photos, it's narrowed. So
Okay.
part of that work would be widening that channel and taking the sediment out there, but it wouldn't be removing it and just putting it somewhere to continue being a pollutant source. It would need taken to an approved site that has the proper erosion and sedimentation control plan to preclude that sediment from getting back in the waterways. So in essence, the stream bed, part of the vegetation, the existing vegetation that's there now is largely an invasive species. Taking that vegetation out, widening the stream bed, reestablishing that buffer strip along the stream with native plantings that preclude erosion. So it's part and parcel, and it's not necessarily, Mr. Panza, what I'm proposing. It was what was in the pollution reduction plan that council committed to in 2017.
So when it says proposed, it's committed projects.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so,
good.
I'm sorry, you said there's gonna have to be some easements to those properties down in Lower Blanco.
Yes.
Generally, how much property are we gonna have to take to?
That's a good question. And usually it's about 10 to 15 feet of width, maybe 20 feet.
Total or from center point? So if the creek is in front of the house, what are we talking to the,
Yeah, 15 to 20 feet on average.
Okay.
It varies depending on where the property is and things like that. But a lot of the easements, and again, it's not that we're taking the property and deeding an easement or conveying that property. That property owner still own that property. All of that easement is allowing us to go in, do this work, restore it, be responsible for that work, and be responsible for the operation and maintenance of that stream restoration project. We wouldn't be acquiring the property from those property owners.
Right. And there were no other projects that would be less disruptive to property owners in the borough. This one,
Yeah,
it meets the requirement and has a minimal effect to property owners.
correct. Stream restoration projects in terms of sediment and nutrient removal get the most bang for the buck in terms of DEP's empirical data. And largely this stream section of Whiskey Run was selected because of its ease, if you will, in terms of less disruption to the existing property owners.
That's,
That's,
we do have another creek. We have a creek in the nature center that doesn't touch, well, it only touches maybe one property.
but that could be a candidate for future permit cycles as well. In terms of evaluating all the streams in Green Tree in the lead up to the 2017 plan, this specific reach was targeted because it is the least disruptive stream restoration program in Green Tree, acknowledging that, you know, there's going to be future permit cycles, and we certainly don't know what those requirements are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just going back to the Whiskey Run pictures that you gave us. You have the stream lined with all these little trees, and you want to come in and take all those little trees out, and then what, replant more little trees after you take them out? That's what, it just seems redundant, because those trees there are keeping those banks stable. Now, I understand if you want to dig out the banks, but then to put the trees back, it just seems like there's better ways to spend our money right now than, you know, take out a tree and then put in a new little tree.
And just in that photo to the left,
Yes,
I see 3 smaller trees that are likely candidates to be removed. In terms of restoring the stream bank, there's probably 100 trees that would be proposed in that stretch to stabilize and create the riparian buffer. Not necessarily the large kind that grow tall.
I understand.
Yeah.
It just seems like, you know, you're not letting nature work the way it wants to work. It seems like we're doing the opposite of what you're trying to achieve. You know, you're trying to achieve man's involvement with our streams to get it more natural, but yet we're coming in and removing everything. It just seems like a lot of money for not, you know, I don't think anyone's gonna be like 10 years from now, wow, look how much less sediment's in this stream. Because it'll go back to the same way after 10 years anyways. So, okay, I'm sorry, that's just what my thoughts are, but,
Thank you.
okay.
Anything else?
No.
Anything else, anybody? Jason, thanks a lot. We
Thank
certainly will be in touch with you in the future. I'm sure we have a lot of things to mill over and figure out what we're gonna do, but this is our update, and we
Yes.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move along to new council business, and first up, there'll be finance and general policy. Mr. Tarosi.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I would make a motion to ratify the actions of the borough manager paying the August 2022 invoices from the general fund, which total $135,657.19. Healthcare totaling $3,216.13. Farmers market totaling $1,237.50. And payroll account totaling $376,568.74.
We have a second.
I second.
We have a second. Any further comments? Any other questions? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstained. Motion passes.
Next, I would like to make a motion to approve the payment of the September 2022 invoices from the general fund totaling $123,720.49. The sanitary sewer maintenance fund totaling $915.94. And the bond fund totaling $4,678.03.
Can I have a second?
I have to abstain, so I can't second.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained.
Abstained.
So noted.
If I may say before the next motion is read,
Mr. Lindsay has requested that you speak directly into your microphone, otherwise he can't hear you.
Okay. Next, I would move to adopt resolution 1312, authorizing the borough manager to act on behalf of the borough in regard to the Green Tree Police Pension Fund and enter into an agreement on behalf of Green Tree Borough regarding the police pension fund, and the associated agreement by and between Green Tree Borough, PNC Bank, and between the Borough of Green Tree and Antico.
I second.
Okay, just a quick update on that. We've, the police pension funds have been run for many years with PNC, and the committee made a recommendation to the borough to go in a different direction, to save some costs and efficiencies. So that's what this is about. So it's really the improving police pension. So that is just for your information on how that works. So we have a motion and we have a second, like a roll call. Kim, please.
Mr. Troisi,
Yes.
Ms. Barron,
Yes.
Mr. Lindsay,
Yes.
Mr. Panza,
Yes.
Mr. Ray,
Yes.
Mr. Tintori.
Yes. That passes.
Next, I would like to move that we authorize the borough manager to act on behalf of the Borough of Green Tree to execute a contract for auditing services with Mar Dussel for the auditing years 2022, 2023, and 2024.
Can I have a second?
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to know why we need to change a little more specifics. Plus, I don't think all the proposals were provided, so I'm not sure what to compare against.
Okay, do you want to
I
step
can,
in here?
I can certainly provide all of those to council. We did review all of them with the General Policy and Finance Committee, and I made the recommendation to make the move to Mar Dussel. And upon discussing it, the committee, the consensus was to, initially I recommended 5 years, and the committee agreed to 3 years.
Well, the reason being, we, at least my opinion, and I think you brought this up a couple of years ago, but we've had a 12-year relationship with this firm, and there's nothing wrong about it. But I think we have rather a new administration. I think we owe it to the borough to have a new look to something. And plus, Mar Dussel is one of the most prominent accounting firms that deals with nonprofits and local governments. And I think the attempt was made to get numerous bids. Some of them did not have anywhere near experience in local government. That was one of our problems, was getting an accounting firm that had experience. And that's where when we received that, I think that's what that's one of the reasons why we just.
Yeah, well, I'm just looking for specifics on which internal financial controls were lacking.
This
And-
we're not saying there's any internal at all. We're
No,
saying.
there is.
Okay.
In Ms. Miller's letter, it said that the borough lacks an internal.
No, I
financial
understand,
control.
but I
So
mean-
I just want,
And he's, okay, I understand.
Specifics
No,
on-
I know what you meant. I thought you were saying, no, I understand what you were saying. But
Yeah.
do you want to finish commenting on it?
I do not have a list of internal controls here now. There were some that were identified that we could strengthen based on I apologize, GASB recommendations, Government Accounting Standards Board. Those were highlighted, not highlighted in any of our audits. And I would recommend that we move forward with a different auditor just to get a fresh look at all of our.
yeah, I mean, I get it. I'm super apprehensive because we're a AA+ rated bond rating, right? If it's not broke, why fix it? But you indicated those internal controls, but from the DCED report. So have we received the DCED report, and why haven't we seen that report if we're making a decision to move to a different contractor? I just want the information before I vote.
So we did receive the administrative report, but not the police or public works.
Has
And
council, has
I have
council
not
seen?
distributed the administrative report that came in, I believe it was last week. And I had mentioned at a previous meeting, once all the reports come in, I can present them to council.
But we're making
Go over them.
decisions based on that DCED report.
No,
And
I don't think so. I think this is a
Okay.
decision based on, I would suggest we would like to have a new auditor. And because
The
we've
letter
had,
says, based on the DCED report, that's part of the reason why we're changing. is
I'm just
that-
saying I'm
If
just
I may
reading
say,
what it-
if I may say that I had recommended getting auditing proposals long before I saw the DCE
Yeah, we talked
report.
about
You
this. I think
So it
when
is.
you
it is
came
not-
on, Dave, I think you were one of the ones saying we should be looking at a new audit.
No, I said, we're open to looking at new ways of doing things.
Okay,
My
well,
concern, my
Go ahead.
concern
Please.
is. I can read it from the letter.
Mr. President.
yes, Mr. Lindsay,
I'd like to comment.
please.
I would support this change. But my biggest concern was the increase in the costs. We wouldn't be doing the audit or assuming any costs until next year. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So that solves that because it will show up in next year's budget. My only other concern is you're asking at least 3 members of the council and the mayor to approve this when they have not seen the rest of the proposals. It was not included in the packet.
I can certainly provide those. That is not a problem.
And I would like additional detail. It says this recommendation is based in part on feedback from our DCED technical assistance peer and the pending recommendation for changes to the borough's internal financial management records. Through the course of the review, it was noted the borough lacks some of the internal financial controls recommended by Gatsby. I just want to know where we're lacking before we make a decision to go with a new auditor, because then it goes on to say that the current auditor should have identified those the lack of financial controls. I just want the information.
No, and I'm saying my reason is not that. We've talked about that a number of years when I was head of finance. I'm thinking we should be getting a new auditor.
That's your reason. but
I'm
the
just
reason
saying
why
that's-
Mr. Miller-
I'm just saying that's where I'm coming from. I'm not saying we have any deficiencies. I know there's some potential, but I'm just saying my thought was 12 years, one auditor. It's a good idea to change. That's all I'm saying. I think we owe it to the borough.
I don't, time is not of the essence, is it, on this particular vote?
I would say if we would like to wait until October, you could, but I would not recommend going further down the road than that.
Yeah,
Because
agree.
it was last year this time, actually, David, that I initially started looking into this. We had a local firm that had approached us that was interested in our business. And that's why I wanted to open up the opportunity and went to 3. 4 were requested, 1 declined to bid, and the other 3 were presented.
Yeah, and my thought is, Ms. Miller, you've done a good job, but I still would like to see the DCED,
I
what their
can send-
recommendation is. And the other thing, I realize the added expense may be a concern, just so that we know what the added expense is, because I didn't see it within the documents, so that, I think that's.
I can absolutely send out all 3 audit proposals
great.
tomorrow,
and-
along with I'll do the peer review. I'll send it to you, the draft that she sent out, but I believe it's I think it's finalized. And then we'll just wait and we could go over the other 2 whenever, as they trickle in.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And it might,
Yeah.
That's fair.
Not a problem. But just so you know, even prior to the DCD report, I felt that it would be a good time to look at a new auditor. And it's not that I specifically had any problems with HOSAC spec, but there are some differences I noted from the standards that I had been accustomed to in public auditing. So I
What's the,
think if you're paying that much money, you deserve a report presentation to council and just kind of combing through things and making recommendations on how you can improve things. And I didn't see that in the last 2 audits. So
I'm not opposed to a new auditor. I just want the
Yeah,
information.
that is, and I
might be-
can
And I
certainly
would
appreciate
also
that.
like feedback, if you could, from the Director of Finance. If what her opinion of it is. also.
Of the
Of the
change.
change and the
Sure.
potential lack in internal financial controls.
Yeah, yeah, that's something I'd like to discuss at some point.
Thank you.
Well, in light of that discussion, then I withdraw the motion.
I second.
Okay, so we will just pull it off and we'll look at it, address it in an upcoming meeting when we get further information. That's fine. Thank you very much. Like to move on to,
Do we need to move the table?
Dave, he withdrew it, so
Okay.
table it. It's just neater that way.
that's fine. Why don't you want to redo your,
Yeah, motion to table
so you'd like to,
the
go ahead.
a motion to table the borough manager's ability to act on behalf of the borough in executing that contract with Mar Duzel. Auditing years 2022, 2023, and 2024.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to table the appointment of a borough auditor at this point in time. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
And abstentions? Okay, that motion passes to table. Okay, moving on, planning and zoning, Mr. Ray.
Yeah, so the planning commission has been addressing an issue with backyard construction of a pool at 17 Crestmont. There was some encroachment on the project. The project encroached onto a neighboring property. The property owners at 17 Crestmont and 15 Crestmont agreed to the sale of the piece of property that the project encroached on. So 15 Crestmont is selling a lot to 17 Crestmont, which will then put the project in compliance. So I'm making the planning commission approve that. Recommended to council that we move forward with approving that the revision of property line of lot 37L-62 and lot 37-L-70 in accordance with the planning commission recommendation dated August 25th, 2022.
Okay, we have a motion. Can we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Just a comment, there's actually, I know this motion only deals with the adjoining neighbor to the left as you're standing on the street, but there's also an encroachment that this motion does not deal with. And it's going to be dealt with down the road on the borough property on the
I
right.
was going to cover that in my general report.
Okay, I'm sorry, okay, but my comment is, I'm not happy with that, but anyhow, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, so we have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries.
For the second motion, can we have discussion before I make the motion? I just have a question about it. Need additional clarification. Is that okay?
I believe we're okay.
Yes. So I just want to make sure that executing this contract with Middle Department Inspection Agency is just a supplement to our building inspector when needed,
Only when he is completely unavailable.
when he's completely unavailable.
Yes,
Okay, not based on workload,
absolutely not.
just if he's,
If he would, so previously we had two building inspectors, I mean, at least for a short period of time. But realistically, we operated with one building inspector for a long period of time. And if that person would become ill or walk up, I always like to say, win the lottery and walk out the door, we would have absolutely no backup. By having this contract in place, we can call them up and they respond.
Okay.
So it's
it's emergency backup. only.
It's as needed, right?
only during absence. I think I mentioned that in my memo.
You
It's only
meant- I
during-
just wanted to
yes,
clarify, right? And,
Absolutely. It has nothing to do with.
There's no
workload.
retainer, there's no
No.
fee, all the fees would be paid for through the the permitting fees
Yeah.
that the property owner.
Yes,
Okay, in that case, I'd like to make a motion that we authorize the borough manager to execute a contract with Middle Department Inspection Agency for provision of building code inspection services.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. Thank you very much, Mr. Ray. Public Facilities and Equipment, Ms. Barron.
Yes, this is revisiting what we had taken off of the agenda last month. So I move, we authorize the borough manager to execute a contract with Vermont Stone for the reconstruction of the Wilson Park retaining wall as outlined in option 3 of the borough engineer's correspondence dated September 6th, 2022.
We have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay,
Yeah, I had some concerns with this. I sent an email earlier. It's my understanding that we have to vote to authorize a bidding of the project. That's what we've done in the past, especially.
wanna clarify
project-
I'm not familiar with that requirement because I've bid other things previously.
Of this
without-
significance? I thought in the past, we've always voted to approve, to authorize borough manager to put a project out to bid of this significance.
Certainly, we can do that if this was not done. And I mean, we had
But that's-
discussed it last year. This project's actually left over from 2021.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I was not, if that is something we need to do, then we should make sure that we're all in agreement as council, because we are certainly cannot ask anyone to do something we're not all aware of.
If you guys want to just table it till the next meeting, we can just double check it, or if it's something that needs to be done today.
I mean, time is important with this
I would have to
one.
check the Honorable charter.
And
I
I
do not
also,
believe the charter requires that.
Oh, if it's not in the charter.
I don't know. It's just maybe it's past practice, what we've done in the past. But I do have some concerns about the options. I don't think we're leaning on our public works department enough to do this project. They've built walls in the past. They're quite capable of building the walls. It's a significant cost of the borough. The time we're spending money on additional engineering, bridges, pools, waterways. We have, like I said, capable and skilled workers to build a wall. Why aren't we considering that as an option?
If I may jump in, it is certainly not a question of skill or ability. It's a question of manpower. We have a 6-man department
Mhm.
and they stay pretty busy every single day. In summertime in particular, right, we had nobody to fill that extra summer help. So they stay busy. They stay busy in the fall. They stay busy in the winter. They stay busy with, leaf removal. They'll have to, take down military banners, wash them, put them away. They'll have to get all the equipment ready for snow removal. And there's a lot of projects that keep them busy. And, my concern would be removing over half of the workforce for one project that could take anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks or longer. I don't know who's going to do the work that those employees normally do. Fall's a really busy time of the year. You wouldn't think maybe so much because the grass isn't growing as much, but unfortunately the leaves are falling. What makes Green Tree beautiful is all the park beds that we have and all up and down Green Tree Road. Those guys are out there
Mhm.
every week doing that stuff. And it's going to fall to 1 or 2 employees to do all of that by
Yeah.
themselves. So it's not a matter of
I-
their
I
skills or
appreciate that. I
ability.
just wish we had a deeper discussion on this big of a hit to the budget, right? I wish we have had more discussion with the Public Works Director, more discussion with the committee. I cannot support this. We did not have enough discussion. I feel like these options were kind of offered over email. There was some email discussion, but I'm uncomfortable voting for that much of a hit to the budget without any additional data or conversation.
Is there specific data that you're
Yeah,
looking
what would
for?
I would like to hear, I would like to meet with Public Works Director. I'd like to look at utilization. I mean,
Yeah,
you know, there's, I believe, two Public Works workers that collect leaves. Is it every day of the week?
we collect
For 8
every
hours
day
a
of the
day?
week as the leaf collection picks up a little bit, probably late October, early November. It's typically twice, every single day, two crew
But there's
members.
volume there, right? It's not as much on the front end, not as much on the back end. There's
Maybe not as
probably
much on the back.
2 or 3 week
Absolutely, there's a.
peak. We have time to complete this project. It's not, you know, it's not an unsafe wall at this point. If it is, we can cordon it off. I don't know if we have to remove,
which
I
we
don't know
have.
why we have to remove a fence to go back that far. I just don't have the information.
So certainly, we can continue to talk about this, but as time moves on, it will no longer be an opportunity to get it done. I believe, and Jason is here, I believe we're heading towards the end of that bid where they could pull it. If we don't act on it.
How long should it take to build that wall?
Hey, could you go to the microphone, Jason? Thank you.
In the bidding documents, there's a 60-day hold period.
Yeah.
I believe the bids were open July 26th, so as August, September 26th. So, in 2 weeks, they wouldn't necessarily need to honor their bids. They could pull their bids. The answer in terms of the first question is the wall is leaning now. It has been cordoned off. It was our recommendation to keep anybody off that wall, any kids off that wall. The reason why the fence has to come down is the wall wasn't constructed properly in the first place. There's no stabilization behind the wall. There's no geotextile behind the wall. There's no drainage behind the wall. It keeps the water that collects underneath the road, gets it into the storm sewer system. All of that water is coming through the existing wall in the form of the effervescence, the white splotches that are coming through the wall. And so in order to stabilize it, the entire wall needs to come out. It needs to go deeper and be cambered back and fortified with geotextile that's underneath the fence. And that length would be right to the edge of the sidewalk. So there's a lot of things that would have to, Public Works doing that. They have to follow the design from the manufacturer in terms of that wall. But the duration of that wall, my experience would be, and again, not knowing the skill set of our Public Works, I think, 3-month time is a reasonable time frame. It's a long wall. The stones aren't small. They're not the Home Depot size stones. They're I think 15 inches by 15 inches by 15 inches. They're not ones that you can handle by hand. Those need to be machine handled. And my gut was telling me 3 months was appropriate for our Public Works. And that's 3 months constant. Working on that wall, unbuilding it, palleting up each individual stone, getting it on pallets, moving it around, digging it back, putting in the stone, putting in the geotextile, stabilizing the sidewalk, and taking down the fence, building the wall, and then, discharging it into the storm sewer to keep the water away. I think a 3-month time frame is reasonable, and that's the number I utilized in my analysis.
If just.
Go ahead.
Just for a point of clarification as well. So the fence that's coming out, and this was after Jason, so this may come as a surprise to Jason, but Carrie and I, we're out just doing other projects, but looking at other things. And he really does believe that in addition to that power washing, sandblasting of that wall to get it looking as good as it can, he also believes that Public Works would be able to remove that fence, clean that fence up, because there's it's green and a lot of the green painting has come off of it. He also believes some savings could be achieved by having Public Works remove the fence, remove the posts, and then store it till the project's done. And then we can reuse that, repurpose that fence rather than, get rid of it. So that's another area of savings and a lot more work that Public Works would be contributing to the project. So I apologize for not mentioning that to you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Just for some clarification, because again, not all of us were here. I'm sure many of us weren't here the last time that wall was rebuilt. Does anyone remember when the wall was built and who built that wall?
Mid-90s. Don, mid-90s? Yeah.
Over 20 years ago. Okay.
And I think some of our public work staff at the time built it.
Did that, yeah, but not current. Okay, and then how long would we expect this wall the rebuilt wall to last?
Well, we're reutilizing the existing stone. So, and there's a significant cost savings associated with that. We'll certainly extend the life of the wall utilizing the existing stone. But the extent of the effervescence, that I don't have any magic solution for that, but I would suggest that it would extend the life by 20 years or so.
Thank you.
You mentioned, I'm sorry, you mentioned that you just said that you want us to make drainage so we can then drain the water into the storm sewer system.
Yes,
Well, isn't that going to increase sediment flow
no,
and everything?
no,
No?
Go right
No.
into the drain.
it's just getting the groundwater instead of percolating through the wall, getting it into a storm sewer. There's not a lot of volume there.
I know, but I'm just saying, it's like we're putting more water in the system than taking it out. Right now, it's not, it's like mitigating itself through effervescence. It's evaporating through the wall, creating effervescence.
And that's part of the reason why the wall's tilting the wrong way.
True, but
That
it's
hydraulic
putting
pressure.
less sediment into our creeks, which you want us to. So this project will send more water in the creeks, where you just got done telling us we have to send less sediment in the creeks.
I want to clarify that it is not Jason who's telling us that, but the federal government.
I
I
know.
want to make that
No, I
point
know.
clear in our notes.
I know, but it's just.
I
once
understand
again,
what you're
it's like,
saying, but.
It's like. But what I'm saying is, so going back to this MS4, that wall would be a perfect thing, saying, look, you're draining all this water from the wall. Let it mitigate itself and not flow into our storm system. So in a way, if we had to drain, we would say, hey, let's take the drain out and let the wall mitigate itself.
But then
to
we
save-
have an
to save
unusable
sediment.
plot of
So
land.
it's just, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just,
We want to make sure people can safely use that park.
yeah.
Question, Vermont Stone, hate to call you Jason, sorry.
Mr.
Mr.
Jason's fine.
Mr. Stan, have you dealt with Vermont Stone before?
Yes, they're a national company. They have a local office in Campbell's Run Road. We met with the manufacturer in the field of the stone that we use in our park, and they are one of two preferred vendors that they have in the area.
Okay, they have a good reputation?
Yes.
Okay, just from personal experience, just real quick, I also have faith in the Public Works Department. However, I've been involved in litigation on landslides. One was out in Plum Borough, 4 houses were going. We hired an engineer, we were a big firm. One day before they were completed, on a 6-month renovation, it went again. The whole hillside went again. So this is tricky. I mean, when you're talking about geotextile, when you're talking about drainage, and if these guys do walls every day, I mean, this, I'm not saying the Public Works couldn't do it, but somebody that does something every day compared to once every 20 years or once every 15 years, I'd probably lean towards somebody who does it every day. Anyhow, that's just my thought. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just some house cleaning. Were we questioning the ability to do a bid on this? Was it previously? Yes.
No, I think it's okay.
Okay. Any further discussion? So we do have a
Yes,
motion.
Mr. President, I'd like to comment.
Yes, Mr. Lindsay.
Echoing a little bit of Mr. Ray's comments. I'm assuming this project's unbudgeted.
Yes, initially, when it came up late last fall, we thought that we could do it under the blanket contract. But upon working with Kate early winter, we determined that that was not possible. So,
We're looking at, if our Public Works Department doesn't do this project, we're looking at roughly $100,000 in costs or more that are unbudgeted.
yes, but I do not see a problem with it because there are several other projects that we did not do this year. Well, at least one of them, which is the band shell over at the Aiken Field.
Sure, but we'll entertain those projects down the road. That doesn't save us anything. We're still gonna be paying to do those projects, right? Whether it's this year or moving forward.
Yeah. Or we could budget this for next year. I would just like to get it done this year.
Well, I generally have a problem with the fact that the Public Works Department built that wall originally. Obviously, they can rebuild it. If we don't let them do these types of projects, I don't know why we have a Public Works Department if we can't do any projects outside of grass and salt and leaves. Seems a little silly. During their negotiations in their last contract, they asked specifically to complete these type of projects to help save the borough money. We're again contemplating not doing that and spending $100,000 of unbudgeted dollars so we can worry about an extra guy out picking up leaves. I just have a major problem with that on multiple levels. We're basically, we can pick any time of year to do a project like this, and the answer is going to be, we're too busy. And the other answer is that we're hiring more public works employees so we can do projects, unless we feel that that's necessary. But at this point in time, I believe it's horrible for us to consider spending $100,000 of the people's money to do something that can be completed, not necessarily 3 months in a row, but piecemeal over the next 6 months. We don't need that field till next spring. So I don't understand how I get both to spend that kind of money, ignore our Public Works Department, and use excuses that we're too busy. So as far as the fence goes, I didn't know why we had to take the fence down. I appreciate Jason explaining that. But if we can take the fence down and reuse it, we're looking at $25,000 or $30,000 to complete this project instead of $150,000. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second? We had a motion. Did we have a second?
Yes.
We
Chuck.
did.
I'm
Yeah, I wonder
sorry.
if we
I
should
lost.
wait until next month.
But we have a motion and a second. If someone wants to make another motion, for whatever reasons, we got to act on this motion right now, or somebody,
Gotta go down.
whatever.
Well, if I make a subsidiary motion that we table this till next month, then I guess we could vote on the subsidiary motion before voting on the primary motion, according to Robert's rules.
That should be fine.
Okay, so I'd like to make a subsidiary motion that we table this discussion till the next meeting. I mean, we table this motion to the next meeting.
Second.
What's going to change next month, Mr. Penza?
We can meet with the Public Works Director and we can talk to them and get their input as to how they feel about rebuilding the wall.
I will say that,
Well, a motion to table was a motion to basically have the Public Works do it because we're going to lose those bids.
yes. And I will say that then we encroach on worrying about it actually being open for the March 1st spring season of the fields. And that field has already been out of use.
It's being used.
It's being used currently. But we run the risk of that wall becoming more unsafe. Unsafe, yeah, that's the word.
Okay, so
That's almost 6 months from now.
we still
It's a
have,
long
the
time.
I'm sorry. We still have the initial motion then that. and
Well,
it's-
no, now we have two motions, so at least vote
Is there
on
a
my
second?
motion.
Oh, Dan,
and
I'm
then-
sorry.
I seconded.
I'm sorry. Dave, I apologize.
So why don't we vote on my motion and get that out of the way real quick? And then-
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion to table this proposal
Yes,
until,
till next month, for
Till
30 days. For
It's not 30 days.
It's not 30
3
days,
weeks.
it's 20, till the next public meeting. Well, that could be any, till October the 3rd. How's that? Okay. Thank you.
okay, well, we could we could certainly have a vote on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
Abstained? Okay.
Okay.
We'll take a look at it next month.
Okay, thank you.
And then if council could just provide direction as to how you would like that conversation to proceed.
Yep, we'll have to take a good look at that and determine if this is gonna even happen. So that will be for the next few weeks to make some determinations of what the next steps would be.
I'd request that we have a public property committee meeting.
I hear you. Yes.
Okay, that would be good. Have a public property committee meeting to kind of sort through the issue and see what other options we possibly have this year and the costs, et cetera. Okay, that's fine. Okay, next up is the mayor's report. Mayor Shank.
Okay, thank you. Couple of things here. And we have a new vehicle. It arrived, but it's waiting to get upfitted. It's going to replace car number 4. Car number 4 recently had 100,000 miles. That's what we mark. That's our goal, to get each car 100,000 miles and replace it. So that's going to work right on time, getting this new vehicle and replacing one with over 100,000 miles. Green Tree Police Department, they'll be at Oktoberfest. They'll be collecting cash and gift cards for the Women's Center and Shelter of Pittsburgh. Officer Feller, that's dear to his heart, the Women's Center and Shelter, and the Green Tree Police Department will be there collecting. They'll also have a separate collecting for donations at the Drug Take Back on October 29th. That's also for the Women's Center and Shelter. In regard to schools back in session, so the police officers are monitoring the bus routes and bus stops. So be careful driving. But anyhow, the police are doing a good job by going around the bus stops. Then the crossing guards are back. We thank the crossing guards for their service. They're doing a good job. That's a tough job. You have to work twice a day. You have to, have time off in between. I'd also like to mention 9/11. I watched 60 Minutes last night. It was the same 60 Minutes as the year before, but there were 343 fire department personnel that died in 9/11 and 72 police officers on that day, including all the other deaths. So that's, just to commemorate like we did on the moment of silence. Also, I went on the suicide prevention walk on Saturday. And it wasn't sponsored by Green Tree, but sponsored by the Suicide Awareness Program. That is a good event. That's something else everybody should be aware of. Everybody knows somebody that's probably multiple people that have taken their own lives. In regard to, on a more upbeat note, Keystone Homecoming Parade is September 30th. All the mayors of the 3 municipalities are there. So it goes for the homecoming parade. It starts in the middle, not at the middle school, one of the grade schools in Dormont, the grade school in Dormont. It goes over to the stadium. In regard to new police officer background checks are into progress. Of the 3 highest candidates, the Civil Service Commission, they determined the 3 highest candidates after testing and oral interviews. And the three candidates were doing background checks. If they pass the background checks, the next step, I believe, is council will interview the three candidates for the opening for the police department. In regard to the Sportsman Bash, it was last weekend. We thank the fire department, Donnie here, for all the work that they did in organizing that. They had a good turnout. Hopefully, they made a lot of money. I know they made a lot of money off of some of people here, so hopefully it worked out fine to their benefit there. And then Oktoberfest is this weekend, September 17th. I'm sure Mr. Panzer will be mentioning that. So I hope to see most people there at Oktoberfest. End of my report. Thank you.
Mayor, will you be available right before the fireworks to go on stage and do some quick presentation and that
Yes,
recognition? Okay.
I'll be there most of the day.
Okay, so please, like at 8:30, be ready for like our 10 minutes. We want to thank our fireworks sponsors and, announce the winners of the raffle and that.
Yeah, I never pass up a photo.
Well, I didn't think you would mind being on center stage. So.
Maybe you can marry somebody. I think that'd be good.
Thank you.
That would
Thank
be
you, Mr. Mayor.
We should offer that.
There you go. Firework marriage.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Good
Mayor.
idea.
We're gonna move on to committee reports. First up is Finance and General Policy, Mr. Tarosi.
I have no new report, Mr. President.
I have a question though. Last month I asked about Hoffman Tree Service bill coming out of the capital fund. I was wondering if you're able to. look at
That was for the trimming of the trees along Green Tree Road. I do not necessarily see that as a capital expense, but that's part of what we're going to be talking about going into budget this year, about some restructuring.
Was that part of line maintenance or was that just?
They were kind of getting out of control, and if you don't kind of keep them trimmed, they're high, yeah.
We're along like by Aiken School over there.
I couldn't tell you exact stretch, but I know a lot of them were directly across the street from the Borough Building. They were a little bit out of control, yeah, probably reaching up to the lines.
Okay.
But yeah, I would see that as an operational maintenance expense, not capital.
Okay.
Okay, we'll move on to Planning and Zoning, Mr. Ray.
Yeah, so as I mentioned in the business section of my report, the 17 Crestmont project, we voted on tonight, encroachment on their neighboring property at 15 Crestmont. There is also encroachment on the other side of their property, which is the nature center. So this is going back a number of years. Their driveway, I believe, is 14 feet over the property line into the nature center, and a new wall that was recently constructed is also encroaching into the nature center. The reasons vary from bad surveys to other reasons. The issue that we have to take action on is because that driveway and the wall encroaches on borough property. Ms. Dearson is coming to us, to our committee after the next borough meeting in 3 weeks, council meeting in 3 weeks, to decide on different options that will then present to council to vote on, ranging from, different options that we have to consider.
Okay.
And we won't know what those are until we meet with Ms. Dearson.
And that's in October that you're
That's
meeting
the
with them.
October, right, that's the October.
After the October
After
third
the
meeting.
October third
Yes.
meeting,
Yeah.
we're meeting with Ms. Dearson. The other thing, this Aiken School, they're gonna construct a fence to close off the playground. So they'll be coming to the borough for a permit to construct that fence. Ms. Miller, I know that there was some conversation about a survey. Do you know if that has been surveyed, if where that fence is going to be constructed, if it goes into the park, if it goes into the parking lot? I'm not sure exactly where that.
Yeah,
fence is.
my understanding, we did see a survey stake while we were out there.
Okay.
And they were going to bring the fence within that, so it would be entire, as it appeared from the drawings that we had, it appeared that it would be entirely on school property, not onto the newly acquired borough park property.
And then the other thing, this really falls under public safety. Several months ago, I think early May, I asked the building principal, Mr. Thomas, if our police officers had access to security cameras. I was told that at the time they did not. Last time I checked, last week, they still do not. Chief Cleary is working with Keystone Oaks Public Safety on getting access to those cameras, but it's something that I think is critical to the safety of our students at Aiken, that our police officers have access to those cameras when they're in need. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. Public facilities equipment, Ms. Baird.
Yeah, I have a few things, all good news. It is Love Your Library Month, which means that through the course of September, any donations made to Green Tree Library are then prorated with a matching donation from the Jack Buncher Foundation. So this means any donation amount, whether it's big or small, gets into a larger pool of more money to go to the library. This has been going on for a number of years. It's a countywide campaign and has been generously funded by the Jack Buncher Foundation. The library and the garden club will be at Oktoberfest this weekend. Please stop by and support these great community organizations. The booths are going to be staffed by committed volunteers, board members, and in case of the library staff. And so I know that everyone is excited to see everyone, and they're very glad to be back for this festival. And then tonight I did ask our council members to sign a thank you letter to a long-standing Green Tree Library donor who stopped by Green Tree Library this month to give her annual donation to the library. And I just wanted to take a moment to thank everyone and to really tell the story of Mrs. Nasri. So Mrs. Nasri and her husband were longstanding Green Tree residents. And Mr. Nasri, before he passed away, was a professor at the University of Pittsburgh in the library science department, where many of Green Tree librarians, both present and past, got their degrees. And he and his wife traveled all over the world, and they really valued lifelong learning. So they, since Mr. Nasri's death in 2008, Mrs. Nasri has given her an annual donation to the library, specifically for language and cultural initiatives. And she has, since it is Love Your Library Month, she does give her annual donation during this month so that it can go to those funds to be matched. In talking with our library director this past week, it was mentioned that when she first started this a long time ago, she had heard from council, but she has not heard from them in a while. Of course, they wouldn't. It goes to the Green Tree Library, but we took this moment to thank her as well. So thank you, everyone, for signing that card. That's the end of my report.
Thank you, Ms. Barron. Mr. Lindsay, you still with us? Would you like to give a report?
I would love to. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
proceed.
Okay, the mayor touched briefly on it. The Sportsman's Bash for the volunteer fire company was on Saturday. From what I understand, unfortunately I had to leave, but from what I understand, it was another successful fundraiser for them. So I appreciate the assistance of the Public Works Department and the Mayor Shank, Chief Cleary, and the council members that supported us financially during that event. Again, another successful year. It was our first one in 3, but everything went well from what I understand. Speaking of the Sportsman's Bash, so Ms. Miller, there continues to be a hole in the apron of the fire company that's being ignored. A couple of our guests actually had to sit over top of that hole during the Sportsman's Bash. back. I think it's kind of embarrassing. We've turned in work orders came from the fire company members to get this fixed. It continues to not be fixed. I'd like to see that something in that hole by the end of the day tomorrow, or at the earliest convenience.
Just so you know, we did secure a proposal from Colosimo and have given them a
I'm sure
notice
you
to
have,
proceed.
but there are temporary ways to fill holes before Colosimo fixes it permanently.
I can certainly request that of the Public Works Director.
Thank you. Furthermore, in the fire company, I was aware of some of these challenges, but it was made aware to me that we have multiple new fire company members that do not have key fobs or access to the building. This has been going on since late last year. I find that kind of disturbing. I know it's some sort of IT problem, and I don't think you're aware of it, Ms. Miller, but it's something that obviously needs to be resolved immediately.
Yes, I have no knowledge of this, but I can certainly take care of it.
So it has something to do with, you know, the multiple changing of the IT departments, but whatever it is, we have firemen running to fires that can't access the building. And this has been going on for over a year.
Yeah. I could be wrong. I don't see where that.
I'd like to get some information back on that as soon as possible, why that's happening. There are hard keys that can be copied and issued if we're still having IT problems on a temporary basis. So we can look into that too, potentially. But one way, shape, or form, we obviously need to resolve this ASAP.
I can certainly do that.
Thank you. Mayor Shank mentioned the new officer checks are being done. The body cameras are all fully in use as of last month. Again, there was an IT changeover that kind of delayed that. I know Chief Cleary worked hard and some of his officers to get that straightened out, but that is all officially up and running at this point. And lastly, I was searching for the fire company, actually. This is another one for you, Ms. Miller. Apparently, the borough has multiple, no less than 9 separate unclaimed cash at the Pennsylvania Treasury
Yes.
that I'd like to see us go get. Is that some type of normal thing that we have to go do?
Yes, actually, we were alerted by Representative Deasy's office of some of that unclaimed cash, and I forwarded that over to the finance director.
Okay.
If
So
it's
you're
one
aware.
if it's one and the same, yes. Like I said, Representative Deasy's office was good enough to alert us to that. I wasn't sure
There is-
exactly what it was for or how much it was, but I sent it over.
Yeah,
to
you
finance.
can't, they won't tell you until the check comes. It just
Right.
says it's over 100 or under 100, but all of ours are over 100
Yeah,
for the most part. And one of them was actually for the police department. So,
yes,
but I counted 9. So
yes, I believe she's already.
I'd be anxious to find out what sum of money that's, because obviously these would have been things that predated your tenure,
Yes,
because it takes a while before it goes to the Treasury Department.
correct.
But I just discovered them myself the other day and just wanted to make sure you guys knew about it and we're taking the steps to go get our money.
I believe that's one and the same, but I'll follow up with you if I think that there's something else out there.
No, I'm sure it's the same. And I appreciate that. That's the end of my report, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lindsay. Next up, recreation and programming, community welfare.
Sure what happened there.
Hung up.
Did you hang up?
He was done.
Good.
Mic drop.
That's it.
Come out.
Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize, Mr. Panza.
Yes, as everyone knows, or should know, next week is Oktoberfest. Oktoberfest runs from 11 a.m. till 8:30, 9 o'clock after the fireworks. The director, I know, and all the volunteers, they put in numerous hours putting this one together. And it was extremely difficult coming back from the pandemic. A lot of the vendors were gone. They went out of business. They weren't there. We had to find, a lot of new people, but we seem to have everything together. I once again was in charge of the weather, which I think I might deliver an 80-degree sunny day for Saturday, if predictions are right. And it's just a wonderful event. We will have alcohol for the very first time. And I personally will be issuing the alcohol bans that will permit you to buy alcohol. So we will be asking for ID when we're selling the bans. So please, everyone have ID with them if they plan on consuming alcohol. And the band, the Earth, Wind and Fire Tribute Band, is right now touring nationally, and they're known as the #1 tribute band in the nation for Earth, Wind and Fire. So that alone, on their website, they said they had over 700 replies as to RSVPs that they'll be there, because they don't play in Pittsburgh that much anymore since they're touring nationally. And ironically, many asked where they could buy tickets. And once they learned there's no admission, everyone's really looking forward to it. So I just hope everything works out. And at next meeting, I'll be giving a summary of how it went. So thank you. And, we are counting on council to do a little volunteering up there because we are short-staffed. I know, Judy, you volunteered.
I'll do bands with you.
Yeah, that's really helpful in everything. So, and that's basically all I have for my report.
Thank you, Mr. Panza. As far as the president's report, first up, I want to recognize the Green Tree Senior Citizens Indoor Picnic that took place on August 7th in the Municipal Center. I understand it was a very big success, and we really appreciate and acknowledge all the hard work that was involved with. That's a really terrific event. Some just shirt pocket notes. I'm always telling people to really take a look at our newsletter when it comes to your house, because there's a lot of great information on it. Some really good information about the Garden Club, what they've been up to. Of course, the Oktoberfest details and the fireworks. Of course, we mentioned the recycling event that is right before Oktoberfest. We always usually line the streets pretty much for that event. That's worked out very well, so get there early. The book sale, I think you mentioned that. You might have mentioned that is October 13th. We'll be able to mention that to everyone again before that, but might as well get that in there. That's all good information. It's in the newsletter. And the pharmaceutical collection, which is going to be on the 29th. So at least be aware of that. That'll be at the Municipal Center from 10 to 2. I believe that is all I have. So I will ask if Ms. Miller, you deliver a manager's report.
Just very quickly, we submitted 3 grants this week for CDBG grants, 2 of which were ADA and 1 was related to some storm restoration type grant, storm bank restoration type grant. So those 3 are in. And through the course of the summer, I was working to try to submit additional grants for Trumbull Drive Bridge and just kept hitting a wall with the application process, and having some conversations about that with our engineers, Gannett Fleming. They were extremely helpful in setting up a meeting with PennDOT, and the purpose of the meeting was to talk to PennDOT about adding the Trumbull Drive Bridge to the TIP, which is Transportation Improvement Program, which SBC oversees, because essentially a lot of the federal funding, you're not even eligible for it unless the project is on the TIP. And I don't know how or why we've been overlooked in the past, but in talking with PennDOT, they felt it was a very good project for the TIP, and we're going to recommend it. So hopefully it will get on the 2023 TIP. And that will, I'm told, no guarantees, but that goes a long way to ensuring some grant funding. So hopefully that'll be an opportunity in addition to the DCED multimodal grant application. So, you know, really just kind of keep looking for ways to bring some free money in the door. And then just secondly, I'll just say that, or lastly, the planning commission meeting for this Wednesday has been canceled. So that's all I have.
Thank you very much.
Well, at this time, I would like to make a motion that we adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. We'll see you next month.
Hey, Ron, can you sign this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for your.
Thanks for being here.